Ready?
And there you are. It's all yours.
Thank you very much, Lynn. And thanks to Megan and Keith, Megan Freebold and Keith Landa, who are also leading the faculty development component of the FACT2 AI initiative for supporting faculty across SUNY system. My name is Sharma, and I work at Stony Brook University. Today, I'm joined by my colleague, Cynthia Davidson, also from SUNY Stony Brook, and Mike Murphy from SUNY Oswego. We will speak about 5-7 minutes briefly to frame some of the activities that we want to do, and we will try to save as much time as possible for our colleagues, the audience, to discuss and do some activities to sort of explore the potentials and pitfalls of AI in education. Before we get started, we've been asked to plug in a word about the AI symposium at CIT conference at the University of Buffalo on May 21 to 24. I'm going to share the link in the chat box for registration. There's a full day event and other activities that this audience may be interested in. I will now turn it over to Mike.
Great. Thank you so much, Sam. And let me share a screen and you guys can tell me if this works. Okay, you guys do now see my screen, yes?
Not yet.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Now, yes.
Okay, and I come to you as Sam suggested from SUNY Oswego, which is today living up to, you probably see out the window, I guess it looks all a haze. That's actually what it is. I was going to say living up to its reputation as the least sunny campus in the SUNY system today. Anyway, the presentation today is identifying potentials and pitfalls of AI use in education. And I want to talk a little bit about potentials. I want to say first, folks will probably almost all remember that a couple of years ago in fall 22, when ChatGPT announced the availability of its generative AI site, there was great sort of clamor and concern, even about like the end of college, writing in college. There were lots of pieces, especially in the Atlantic and the New York Times and other places, that really worried a good deal over what this would mean in terms of like the end of authorship. And there was a sense that writing would become sort of wholly mechanized. It would kind of revolutionize everything in ways that, again, were worrisome kind of for college writing. I think not so much. After some time, I think we've begun to see the limits of ChatGPT and other generative AI programs as utilities kind of for writing, as writing assistants. And I think that Cynthia will point out some of those sort of limits and pitfalls. But I did want to talk a little bit about the potentials. That is that I want to suggest that there are some things that, if what AI could do seemed breathtaking, when ChatGPT came out, I think there are some things that are relatively kind of breathtaking about its functions. One thing that I think it does really, really well, and that I find that I think is useful sort of in the practice of writing in the world, and is useful for some campus colleagues, especially in marketing programs, in PR, in other kinds of programs where the generation of a certain amount of formulaic text is important. I know faculty members in schools of business who say, if I do not teach my students to use AI well, and quickly sort of generate a certain amount of like boilerplate text, I will do them great disservice. Their employers will be angry with them because they've wasted a good deal of time drafting. And with great limits, right, there is the potential for AI to reliably generate some really formulaic kinds of text, marketing copy, right? Sort of online descriptions of products or tourist sites, thank you emails, institutional language. Again, I think that lots of sort of boilerplate language can be at least drafted. I think I know that I always feel strongly And I think most folks in the field do too, feel strongly that there ought to be some, there needs to be some, at least sort of curatorial, if not editorial, kind of oversight by writers. And nothing that, we can't ever ask ChatGPT or any other AI program to simply generate language. Still, it can do a pretty good job at drafting a sort of an original piece. I think it's also really useful for some of our students in terms of learning or becoming at least accustomed with the basics of the conventions of genres. There's lots of, in writing studies, there's lots of attention paid to genre, not simply as a form, but kind of as an activity, sort of set of social relations that evolve between writers and readers around genres. The extent to which genres can kind of be bent and their conventions at different moments can be stretched. Still, I think even in academia and then outside academia too, there's one of the basic sort of functions of generative AI that can be useful is to give writers a sense of the basics of lab reports or meeting minutes, or how do you set up a press release anyway? I have to do it, right? I've never done it before. ChatGPT will give you some sense kind of how to do that. And again, I think that serves some sort of utility both inside and outside academia. Those are, again, I think some of the most conspicuous kinds of support that generative AI can offer writers. I think the stuff that most of us are interested in as faculty members in higher education are more academic genres. Papers of different sorts, analyses, and arguments. ChatGPT tends, I think, generative AI tends to be much less useful for those kinds of programs. I know that or those kinds of objectives. I know when I've asked my students to use in a first year writing course, to use AI, they have a really hard time with it. They struggle with it. And most, in fact, resist it because they find using it much more difficult in some ways than not, which I suppose should be heartening in lots of ways. But in any case, I think that what people are finding by and large is that for academic writing, really early in the process and really late in the process, there are kind of applications for AI. For one thing, late in the process in terms of proofreading, right? There is some function that is Grammarly is built into ChatGPT, at least as I understand it. I find in some ways that ChatGPT, the sort of editing and proofreading function is better than Grammarly. Again, I think it needs to be paid attention to. I don't think it's an autopilot kind of a thing at all, but I think it can help some students work with sentences and do some kind of general proofreading that we've looked for grammar and spell check to do in the past. The most important thing, though, I think, is early in the process. I think for some writers, who are especially able to sort of think with the machine, I think there's some real utility in deepening, refining, complicating, developing ideas sort of early in the process. I think that successful writers, writers who've used ChatGPT successfully, I guess I should say, academic writers, are people who've learned to converse with it, to try out an idea, think about counter arguments, think about sort of common stances. Again, to call ChatGPT into some kind of a conversation around an idea is, I think, potentially a useful way for academic writers to build and develop their own ideas. We plan.
Mike, there is a request from the side to use full screen.
Okay.
It's right there at the top right slideshow. Top right. That might work too.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was having trouble pulling the Zoom window up at the same time. So anyway, yes, I apologize for that. We set up activities for each of these sort of really brief talks. And so I was going to ask, I don't know if Sam, you're able to set up breakout rooms for us. I should ask the group though, how many people, do we have some sense of how many people here have ChatGPT accounts?
Well, we're likely to have at least one person who doesn't, and in that case, you can just take notes or listen to other colleagues, right?
Okay. Sam, shall we put people, I think we'd imagined a number of small groups at 3 or 4 to ensure that we have somebody in the group who has a chat, or make it likely that somebody in the group who has a Chat GPT account. Shall we set up groups of 5 or 6?
Yeah, so there are 150, 60 of us. So let me do about 30 so that we have about 5 of us, right? And so the instruction, because we cannot see your screen yet for some reason this time.
Oh, you don't?
If you could stop sharing the screen, I could do that for you.
Okay, that's great.
Let's please share what you have in your instructions, and then we will open the rooms.
Thanks, Sam. Basically, following each of my sense of each of those sort of basic utilities of generative AI, I was going to ask you to consider doing one of these. You could simply cut and paste this prompt into ChatGPT. Think a little bit about what you got, or you can play with any of the prompts. That's fine. I have had colleagues talk about drafting a letter of reference for students. I know that some people have begun to do it. Use Chat GPT for different kinds of letters of reference. Again, if you wanted to try that, you would need to quickly describe both the qualifications and the the qualifications and the. I just lost my screen entirely here.
Here's what I was trying to do, because it will be easier if we give colleagues the text in a Google Doc, because when they go into the breakout room, it'll disappear. They can't see the screens anymore.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is
I'll
give you the link in the chat box, give you the link to a Google Doc. Here it is. So whatever Mike was showing, and I'm going to show it again, is actually visible. Aha, that worked. All right. Let me go back. Here it is.
Okay.
Continue, Mike,
I'll
and
just
tell me when to open the breakout room.
Yeah, it's sort of in connection with so it's kind of relatively formulaic writing. Again, drafting a letter of reference. Secondly, in connection with a genre, I think that Chat GPT is especially good at forms. I said compose an English sonnet on the pros and cons of choosing Aaron Rodgers as the presidential running mate. You could choose both a different form and a different topic, but the point would be, again, to think about some kind of a standing genre. Thirdly, develop topics, kind of general instruction at the level of academic writing. Develop topics for a paper and a communication studies course on acceptable limits to freedom of speech. Right. And then I think in a somewhat more defined way, I'd like to argue in my communication studies course, a context, that anyone who knowingly publishes misinformation online should be liable for any damages it causes. Relatively specific kind of a goal. Can you help me with examples and potential counter arguments? Right. Again, relatively specific kind of a request. So. All right. So I don't know if, Sam, you have those rooms set up.
Yep, I put them in the Google Doc, so when you go into the room, you're still able to see. Otherwise, the Zoom, when you go into the breakout room, you're not able to see anything, not even the text on the side if we put it there. So please go to the chat box, open the Google Doc, and if you like one of these prompts, use these prompts, test out ChatGPT and have a conversation. I'm going to open rooms of 5. We have about 7 minutes, unfortunately, 7 or 8. How well does it do? Camera stops the screen. And Mike, I believe there'll be colleagues in this main room, so if you want to stay here and facilitate the conversation. Oh, maybe he's gone already. I can do that.
I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name.
It's Sam. Yeah.
Is it Shyam?
No, it's like SAM. The 2 letters are silent.
Sam. It's like Sam. Oh,
Yep.
okay. Okay. Sam, I don't group.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just staying here with you then?
Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So for those of us who came through the browser and it doesn't allow you to go to the breakout room, feel free to stay here and that we can have a conversation. The first step, let me write a message to everybody out in the rooms. The question, how well did ChatGPT do on the prompt you gave it? Um, exploring potential. Okay. Colleagues, please copy one of the prompts that you like and put it on ChatGPT if you have it. If you don't have it, then please give the rest of us a few minutes and we'll share with you what we think, and then we can start the conversation from there. I'm gonna copy the third prompt and see what it does. I have ChatGPT 4, the pro version of it. I can show you what it did. Or maybe somebody else wants to share instead of anybody would like to share what it did and what you think. Laura? Hi. Okay. Since no one is speaking up, let me share quickly what it did. Something intriguing here. I'm gonna expand this. Here's what it did. I said, develop topics for a paper in communication studies course on acceptable limits to freedom of speech. And it gave a bunch of historical, cultural, legal, ethical. It's basically using this perspectives trope, rhetorical tropes. I'm now going to ask it to write an actual essay. Please write a 1,500 word essay on topic. Let me say 3, 4. And let's see what it does. So it writes a very basic introduction, ethical frameworks, limits of free speech, ethical consideration, sort of a problem solution model. And it still has a lot of these listicles, bullet points. It loves bullet points. So if you ask me, I think it is very basic. Oftentimes it can produce very sophisticated text, but as my students consistently tell me, it is so high school. And I do not understand oftentimes why scholars and educators, as well as the technology developers, are saying it does everything. That is not everything. My students are writing at a much more advanced level, and the context and contingency and complexity of their writing. My students' writing is far more diverse and complex than this. But it seems to prompt some thinking, brainstorming. That's my impression. Other colleagues? Please share what you think. Even if you haven't tested it now, I'm sure you've tested it before. The first activity is to explore the potentials together. And then the second activity will be like the limits. And then the third one is sort of how do we harness its potential for and avoid its potential in the context of teaching learning. So the first discussion is, what do you think about the potential? A discussion rather than a presentation.
Hi, I tend to agree with you. I have used it, and I have I teach a writing intensive course, by the way. So it's I did want to, in a way, incorporate it into class because I was afraid of students just using it and me not knowing. So I figured get ahead of it and at least introduce it and try to get them to think about how they can use it, in class. And it actually spurred some really great conversations with the students. And as you said, though, I do find that their writing is definitely more rich. They incorporate a lot of their experience and what they did find in discussion and us putting things in and kind of discussing what it puts out is that it's very not just basic, it's just a very over surface layer of information. It's really not, it does not get into too much in depth or so it's good to start with, but it's really not good to really base your whole paper off of.
Yeah.
So, right now what we're doing in class is kind of just using it as a tool to say, okay, where can we go now to find the information we need to write the paper we're going to write?
Yeah. And the more students use it, the less they like it, the less they depend on it, the less they trust it, which is what I like a lot because that kind of critical attitude is needed. Without the critical attitude, they become gullible. They don't know they can't tell between the hallucinated fake information versus something that seems plausible because the tools are designed to create plausible patterns of sentences. They're not designed to know what is real and what is not real, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Susan.
I have noticed that this semester, uh, it's very clear to me that some of my students for whom English is not their first language are using AI to compose emails. Because every once in a while there will be an email that where I hear their actual voices, and then they'll send something that I think that is much more formal. And I wondered if we could talk about if someone doesn't have academic English proficiency, if they're going to be able to look at what AI has generated for them with kind of a critical lens.
We'll talk about that in section 3. It is so important. What you're raising is very, very important. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
This is such an important point. If the students cannot judge, should they use it, right?
Yeah.
It's not only for native English speakers, it's equally important for the non-native English speakers. It's important for the basic students and advanced students, intermediate students, because if you can't judge it, don't use it. That's it.
But they don't see it that way
because
because it's like it gives them comfort, like they feel like the machine will cover for them. But
Hey,
it's very
let's wait another few seconds until everybody comes back. The first segment, we have 3 20-minute segment. We are a little behind time on the first segment, but this is normal. We will go into segment 2. Mike, we were going to have a discussion, but I don't think we can do justice to full group discussion. Let's move on to the second segment. Is that okay? Okay. All right. Right, all right. 3 seconds, 2 seconds. All right. Thank you, everybody. We were going to have a brief discussion between the segments, but I don't think we can afford the time. We can have a discussion at the end, other than the small group discussions. Cynthia, take it away. We are into the second 20-minute segment. Oh, you're going to share the screen, actually. Uh-oh. How did I become? Spotlight, Cynthia. Hi, Cynthia.
I had some problems unmuting myself here.
Okay.
Okay, share screen. Can we? Okay. It's not, okay, it wasn't letting me share screen.
You
Hold
can,
on.
yeah, if you wanna, I could do it for you if you.
Would you do it for me?
Okay.
It's giving me grief. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. All right, I'll let you share and I'll tell you next slide when I'm ready.
Yep.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so I've identified, hi everyone. I've identified 5 different little groups of identifying pitfalls. Of course, there are many, many more, but this is what I want to look at today. So number 1, AI making over errors due to lack of information. Number 2, outsourcing skills, primarily reading and argumentation, although there's many others you could talk about. 3, encouraging unethical or illegal behaviors. 4, detecting plagiarism with AI produced text. And 5, taking intellectual responsibility. Next slide, Sam, please. Okay, so AI, more often than we realize, makes outright mistakes due to lack of relevant or precise information, and it just kind of fills in the gaps sometimes. It makes stuff up, and it will do so in a way that blends well with accurate information so that it catches everyone off guard, including fabricating academic sources. So this man is the editor of the Oxford Review. He is David Wilkinson, and he prepared this video where he talks about all the fake sources that his students were putting into their papers. And he researched them and found they did not exist, but they look very official and very real. So that is a real thing that happens sometimes. And other people, I think Sam can verify that. He's tested that with his students as well. So this is a good reason to make sure your students include permalinks or digital object identifiers with their sources. And you should probably click through them to make sure they're real. Next slide. So more advanced versions of ChatGPT, the 4.0 version, that you pay $20 a month for right now, can quickly read documents that are uploaded as PDFs and summarize them. This has legitimate educational convenience, especially in determining if a document may be useful. But if the user does not follow up with their own careful reading, they can miss inaccuracies in the summarization or important details of information, or misunderstandings about conclusions that the AI may have drawn. For inexperienced readers, such as some students, activities like this outsource reading ability to the AI, and they may never learn to properly read scholarly articles or advanced source material. And this could be even worse for younger students who haven't obtained their full adult reading levels. Okay, next slide. Can AI help people achieve unethical acts? Yes, it can. And when it's trained not to do this, clever users can still find a way to prompt it so that it bypasses that firewall. For example, ChatGPT may not help you build a bomb without a flurry of warnings and maybe a refusal to cooperate. But if you ask it to tell a story about how to build a bomb, it might just do that with no problem. Also, training or retraining AI to recognize red flags that may lead it to assist people to accomplish unethical or dangerous behaviors is an ongoing challenge for developers. A good example reported in 2023 in the Washington Post was about a child who asked AI for help preparing for a meetup with an adult predator. The AI did not recognize the danger and encouraged the child to meet the person. This is an ongoing problem. Next slide. Detecting plagiarism is a sore spot with AI-generated text because the detection tools are highly unreliable. Kyle Wiggers from TextCrunch tested 7 different detectors and found that they failed in the majority of cases to identify AI text. As AI output improves, it should become harder to detect. This may, of course, change with some unforeseen breakthrough, but detecting AI is far more difficult than detecting student plagiarism with tools like Turnitin. Most teachers will not, for ethical and legal reasons, one to risk flagging an innocent student. So many of us have moved away from focusing on identifying AI-generated text and moved toward making every attempt to increase student engagement in the writing process. For me as a teacher of students who write and argue about research, that means focusing more on how they engage with their sources, especially. The internet has been a location for engaging in debates and discussions with others for many, many decades, but for some time, writers and academics have pointed out that technology displaces us from our own thinking processes because of knowledge being constantly at our fingertips, such as with Google, for example. It's easy to dismiss this as wariness about new technologies, but AI makes it even more possible for people to outsource their knowledge gathering to a single place. So last month, I heard a CEO speak about how he no longer uses Google and just uses ChatGPT to get all his information. So that is happening. And one of the advantages we teach students in university is their ability to gather information from a variety of sources. So this really bothers me to hear that people are just going to ChatGPT. I think this is a sensitive point for educators and one where we need to determine where we are going to put most of our energy. Even if students come to depend on AI for information and advice, how do we move them beyond it and stimulate them to make sure that AI becomes a way to expand what human minds are capable of rather than a replacement for critical thinking and engagement with knowledge? So we're going to do another little exercise here. Think about a course that you teach. You can list this or you can just keep it in your mind, but we're going to think about a few types of pitfalls you can think of using the list, like AI making overt errors due to lack of information, outsourcing skills, and so on. Please go back. I'm not done. So we're gonna think about how you think you could address those pitfalls or how you have addressed them. So we're going to do another breakout group and spend 5 minutes discussing this. And Sam has a Google Doc that you'll be able to see in the chat.
I put the questions in the Google Doc. Let me turn that into black so you can see. Okay, there it is. Let me share the Google Doc again and then open up the breakout rooms. View gallery, breakout rooms. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Okay. So the question is exploring the pitfalls in the case of your classroom. Alrighty, here in the main room, it looks like some of us the breakout room tool didn't show up. If that happened, then don't worry. Oh, maybe I can assign a few colleagues to rooms that don't have more than 2 people. That would help because we don't want just 2. Give me a second, please. And I'm gonna do that. 3. I didn't realize it wasn't. Okay. So in the case of my classrooms, just to get the conversation started, I find that students trusting AI is the biggest pitfall. That trust leads to lots of different kinds of problems. When they believe it can find information, in reality, it actually makes up information. And that making up, it tries to make it as plausible as possible, depending on the data set and the algorithm, but it doesn't know if it made up completely. So if you say, what do cat things when it is sunny? It'll absolutely say, make a plausible, response. It has no way of saying, no, that's a silly question. There's no way to know that, right? For us, intuitively, human beings might have a way of contextually, culturally, or logically judging an absurd piece of information. It doesn't. And it'll make up, when it is sunny, cats think blah, 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 and it is laughable. The same thing applies even if you ask for, an actual subject in the real world. If you say, what is the United States president doing today? That is a question that's possible to ask and answer, right? But there's no way for it to know that. So if you put the word today, then it might say, I have no information since September 21, 2023, when I was trained. If you take out the word today, then it will start answering. And so this kind of stress testing, the tool in the classroom, has been very helpful to me. I find like 70 different ways of making fun of ChatGPT, and the students find more. And by stress testing it, they become conscious about when not to and how not to and why not to use it. I do that with, factual versus fictional questions, absurd versus the realistic prompts, ethical versus unethical prompts, right? Tell a 13-year-old about how to make a date with a grown person romantic. And that's the question it answered, according to a journalist who, a few months ago. It was disturbing. So we check before, trusting. So that has been for me one of the ways to test for pitfalls. Any colleagues? What have you found it to be not able to do where you need to warn your students? If we can make a list of 10 things not to do and 10 things, 10 ways in which they might find it useful, that itself is a very good start to sensitize students in both directions. And they can become their own, pitfall explorers and potential explorers. Sorry, it was somebody had spotlighted me. Any thoughts? Any experiences? Any?
The one thing I do worry about is I do feel when reading some of my students' work that it isn't exactly their words. I have had but it's nothing that comes up through, we have Turnitin, and it doesn't come up. Although sometimes, which I do think AI does, is it pulls in things from other sources. So, and it will come up verbatim. So I do have like these instances where I have a student referencing a source, but it comes up in Turnitin as a completely different source. And so I do think that they are using it at times and probably pulling information. So I don't know how to overcome that, because unless you have that particular instance of it coming up as that, how do you say, what do you say? There's nothing in my syllabus that says that there's
No,
how
there's
do you handle a situation like that? You do, I mean, I do see it, and I don't think it's their words, but I can't prove that.
No, there's no the fight on the fight over catching student plagiarism is over.
Yeah.
It is effectively over. There's no way to do it. I have fully and completely and humbly given up.
Yeah.
That is not the approach anymore. There is no way if the student is actually only looking at to brainstorm ideas and write their own, write the ideas and make it improve, or maybe Pat's right and there's no way to do that. Absolutely not. Right. We're back to what I call the uncle writing.
Yeah.
There's no way to.
I know. I feel like that it is something that's just like, what do you do now? I mean, there's
I guess we need to let them know they're here to learn. And if they are bypassing, and that's my segment, the next segment, if they're bypassing the learning process, they're paying too much for college.
Yeah.
That's the only solution.
Very true. Oh, very true.
Yeah, I have. And the other thing that has really helped me is to actually show the pitfalls so that in the beginning of the semester, I take a survey and half of the students say, I'm using it. And half of them, the half will say it is effective, it is good. At the end of the semester, the number has dropped from, half of the students saying I'm using it to only 25% of students saying I'm using it. The rest of the 75 is like, I'm not using it, it's not worth it. I found out.
Yes.
And I'm like, yes.
I guess that's the goal.
Goals achieved.
Yeah.
They will use it for other purposes, but for learning that that demands original thinking, not undermining your own learning process, engaging in the experience, and sort of having pride in your own thoughts and ideas. These are the things that we foster. And once you foster these things, the idea of using it to cheat, using it to bypass, becomes less and less and less and less attractive, right? For students that are stressed out, have run out of time, are scared about failing, yes, it can still be appealing, but even they need to know that it is going to make it worse if they try to use it under those circumstances. And one of the things students have learned is that I need a lot of time to be able to use ChatGPT effectively, and I need a lot of skills. And because of the time and energy that it demands to use it effectively, most of the students say, sometime in the future, but not in this course. And that means the number of students trying to use ChatGPT to cheat has gone down from 3 or 4 when it first came out to 0 in 3 or 4 semesters. This semester, I don't think anybody's trying because of the process, the nature of the assignment, the kinds of tests that we do in the classroom, the bizarre pitfalls that they've seen in the class. I haven't seen anybody seem to use ChatGPT to basically bypass the whole process. Susan, other colleagues, please share. What pitfalls have you found? What pitfalls do you inform your students, educate your students about?
To me, some of the pitfalls fall more on the faculty side than on
Yeah.
Is that feeling of mistrust that, for those of us who've been around for a long time, it feels very, I don't really even know what the right word is. It feels dishonest in a way. And if you have a student who is writing really poorly and they go to academic advisement and they get some counseling and some support, and then the next thing you know, their papers look like they were written by someone else. It's just, that kind of the confrontation that you want to avoid, but you feel like you have to have because it seems unethical. And then the student says, no, I got academic support and I'm writing better now. And it just sets up this really thick, distrustful dynamic that's uncomfortable for faculty.
Yeah. I completely agree. I have seen a lot of scholars, scientists, doctors, lawyers using that, AI to do things that are alarming. And I'm thinking, I recently wrote an op-ed in a news paper about the importance of like addressing that common hallucination. All right. We have 30 seconds before it teleports everybody back into the room, and we'll go into the third segment. I will try to save a little bit of time for a full group discussion at the end. Cynthia has asked me to skip the discussion in the middle and go for a full discussion at the end. Thank you, everyone. It looks like we're all back. So my task, the last segment, we have 15 more minutes, 14, is much simpler than Mike's or Cynthia's. Mike was showing us how to explore the potentials, and Cynthia was showing how to, alert students and educate students about the pitfalls. And building on Mike's and Cynthia's segments, my task is to facilitate a discussion on how then do we help our students to avoid their bypassing their learning while they explore and utilize the potentials of AI. Simply put, in the educational context, the question of what AI can do and where they will fail should be focused on whether they can help or hurt learning, not on whether how to get things done. So, for example, if students are learning to write thank you email, as Mike included, the question they should ask is not, can ChatGPT write a thank you email for me? The question should be, how can AI tools help me to learn or significantly improve my skills at writing thank you emails? It matters far less how sharp and effective our educational tools are, both for us and for our students. Our entire mission is to help students lay the best foundations of knowledge, skills, and experience to our successful careers as scientists and engineers, social service and medical professionals, lawyers and policymakers, and toward being happy individuals and impactful citizens of the world. So I am baffled when I see educators excited about whether or how ChatGPT can offload reading and summarizing labor, or save time for analyzing or synthesizing research. It is as if they somehow forget that students are in college to learn reading and summarizing, analyzing, and synthesizing skills, not just to learn how to use certain tools to do so. So imagine that AI will soon become able to perfectly process or visualize data, to perfectly generate original intellectual positions or outline and draft project reports, translate between languages, and so on and so forth. But educators' professional responsibility will continue to be to enable students to judge the quality of AI assistance, how it actually works, and where it fails, and why, whom it helps, and what human and social causes it hurts. So we cannot stop asking, how can we help students to do what Mike showed to do knowledgeably and effectively, and where must we help students to avoid the pitfalls and harms that Cynthia showed us today? So here, on that note, let me share toward our final activity, a framework for preventing the bypassing of learning in the form of questions. 1, how can we help students explore the potentials of AI tools to enhance learning, assist learning? We could focus on the learning process, for example, or the experience of learning, or the objective of learning, not the task or outcome, as I said. As students will focus on task and outcome when they get into their life and profession later. But during the learning stage of their life in college, the focus should be on the learning. We should warn students not to take the assisting of learning too far, because too much help is not helpful to learning. They need to be able to decide where ChatGPT is helping me too much, even if it is reliable, accurate, dependable. We should use concrete strategies for vetting AI. For example, in my classroom, I use a method called the 5 C's. I ask them to compose first or check it out before they compose. But either way, compare the human and the AI with each other. And then if they use any words or ideas to cite, and finally, and most importantly, critically reflect on what AI was able to do and not able to do. But if they could not compose themselves and relying on AI doing it for them, they have fundamentally bypassed the first step. Second, how can we help students to avoid the pitfalls that hurt their learning? Teachers should raise awareness, so concrete examples of pitfalls like Cynthia did, motivate students to focus on the learning, not the grade or not the outcome, not the task, but the learning. We must have a clear course policy that is framed educationally rather than focusing on punishment and dishonesty. We have already lost the battle on dishonesty. We cannot detect AI written answers. And take time to discuss that policy in class, that education-focused, not dishonesty-focused policy. We should use ample learning by doing activities so students can stress test the AI. And once they learn to see the pitfalls, they will test it out and they will try to focus on their own learning. And finally, how can we use AI tools to leverage teaching and learning, such as we can do that by not letting the potentials fool us or the pitfalls scare us. I think we should explore both the potentials and the pitfalls as Mike and Cynthia did today. There's no avoiding the influence of AI on education and the professions. There's only exploring it. Ultimately, the question is how we approach it, how we use it, and how we help students use it and avoid it when it hurts learning. So the third activity is basically a Google Doc, the one that I already shared. I'm going to ask you to go to that Google Doc. I might share the link one more time in the chat box because sometimes the chat box, sorry, the link disappears in the chat box when you go in and out. Okay, and so I'm gonna put the third activity up top, okay, at the top of the document, and here's the task. What are you taking away that you could use potential-wise, and what is one strategy that you would use to prevent the bypassing of learning pitfall-wise? And if there's anything else, another idea, another practical strategy that you want to share with us, let us spend about 4 minutes writing and then the remaining 4 minutes talking. I think writing will help us to do a sort of conversation with less time. I use this trick in the class all the time.
Excuse me, would you mind putting the question again at the top of the Google Doc for us?
The questions are in the Google Doc. Could you please click on the Google Doc? And the questions are right there in the Google Doc. Yeah, the chat. If you look at the chat box, there's a.
Sorry, but
And there's some lag. I think I can't type on the document for some reason.
Oh,
Me too.
uh-oh.
I think everyone has.
I think it's because there's too much traffic
Too much traffic. Let me do
on the
this.
site.
Yeah, let me share the screen again so you can take notes offline. It's a takeaway kind of reflection. I wanted to ask, what are some potentials you thought about today that you can take back to your classroom? What is a threat or a pitfall that you were thinking you will take back in the classroom? If you have any other idea, please share. 5 minutes for reflection. We can also, I'd also like to encourage colleagues to speak up and share. There are really good post on the side in the chat box. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, and please come for the next session. We have a whole series. I'm going to stop sharing the screen to encourage colleagues to share their thoughts with. We have a few more minutes. Please share. For anybody not able to read the Google Doc, let me copy over into the chat box. Really good stuff.
Shyam, I can share if you allow,
Yeah,
because I can type in the doc. So my
please.
takeaway from this workshop and is, like if you want to work on this, we really need to focus on, the questions we are asking or the, how we are assessing students' learning, right? So for my course, for example, what I'm doing is I am redesigning the questions based on real life experiences, bringing reference from the textbook, and also like providing them films, documentaries, and really asking questions. What is your reflection on those? So that, they cannot just formulate a question and ask AI tools to produce an answer, right? So I think that's really helping in my courses, that a lot of students, sharing their personal experiences, real life experiences. I know I teach sociology and do designated course. And in this semester, I'm teaching asynchronous classes. So for me, it's very difficult to, communicate this to students like one-on-one conversation, right? So I always, try to redesign my questions. This workshop is really helpful that, along with me, other my fellow faculty members are having similar problems. So thank you so much for this opportunity to have, conversation with all of you.
Thank you. Yeah, we're almost out of time. Anybody else, please highlight. Any thought?
I feel like we need a whole course and not just a series of 1-hour webinars. I kind of like, it feels like the horse has left the barn and I'm chasing after it. So I appreciate these opportunities to kind of dip my toe in the water and see what's going on, what other people are doing. Thank you very much.
Mike, Cynthia, you also had some other thoughts at the end. If you could take a minute, want to share, wrap up.
My only thought is with respect to the horse having left the barn thing, the horse continues to leave the barn every fight. Like this changes a lot really, really quickly. And I think the limitations of AI, lots of the ones that make AI feel like significantly less distinguishable from sort of human writing. I think AI will argue better in the future. I think AI will be better in its use of voice. I think things will change quickly, I guess is the thing that I wanted to suggest, and that AI will improve.
I see that Stephanie posted about the FACT2 full day AI symposium in May, and there's a link to the registration page. That sounds really valuable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you.
All right, we are out of time. Thank you very much, everybody. See you at the next webinar.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Organizing colleagues, you had any notes, any announcements? Okay.